Welcome back to another episode of Adventures in Machine Learning. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Berk, and I'm not joined by my co-host today, unfortunately. He is out of office taking a much-needed vacation. But today we are joined by Richmond. He started his career as a software developer, specifically focusing on systems and full-stack JavaScript. He then worked as a contractor at O'Reilly, leading a computer vision course, and then contributed to NVIDIA as a course instructor. Currently, he's a staff developer advocate for AI and machine learning at MongoDB. So, Richmond, we're going to start off with a little spicy question. Do you need clickbait titles to get views on Medium?
Man, I have not written in Medium like religiously in at least a year and a half. Back in the day, no. Yet today, yes.
Oh, man.
Great answer.
That's too bad. So I have a blog that I used to publish to weekly. It was breaking down academic sort of articles for the layman so that they can actually try to implement and understand the concepts. And I remember I had some really grotesque titles of like 7 technical words in a row. And then I was like, top 10 tips for being good at Python. And then so many clicks. It's really an interesting phenomenon. How do you think about naming pieces of content?
Firstly, the top 10 stuff, listicles do great, right? On those platforms like Medium. So, but I don't do them much. Sorry, can you just repeat the question again? I sort of went off track.
Yeah. So for naming content, what's a good name? What's a bad name? Do you ever get guilty for using listicles?
I don't get guilty for using listicles because I don't write a lot of listicles. But what's a good name and a bad name for naming content? I normally do bad names. I'm in a bad name category, as in I'm doing more content on YouTube, and I don't understand how to name my videos. Sometimes I'm thinking like you, just put as much technical words or make it as descriptive as possible. But then I see videos that do like several hundreds of thousands of views, and it's like a sentence. It's like cleaning my computer or something, and they get millions of views. I'm like, I'm doing this YouTube, this Medium game wrong. So and it changes from platform to platform. So on Medium, good content, good title for your content. It's really something that will make people click. And what I do is any article that I find myself clicking on, I save that title in a notebook, in a notebook, and because I'm clicking on it, there must be a reason why that title is very good. So I have is like a list of different titles, and I try to like make my content title match that back when I used to write more frequently on Medium.
Got it. Okay, cool. So do you mind if we take a step back? Can you clarify and sort of elaborate on your content creation journey? And I'm curious, as someone who like wrote a Medium blog, who then entered this podcast, who then became a host of the podcast, who then used that to join Databricks, content creation was very essential for my career path. I was wondering if you felt the same way or whether it hurt, helped. What are your thoughts?
For me, content creation has definitely helped. So we'll probably have the similar background in where I started creating content just so I can reinforce my learning. So I started creating content back when I was in university, doing my master's in what we call AI. And I wasn't really understanding the very hard stuff. So I was like, hey, let me actually write this. It was going to force me to go deeper into topics. And it really helped build my knowledge, and 2, my reputation within the space that I'm in, which is the AI, the machine learning space. So back in the beginning, I did a lot of computer vision content and deep learning content. And that led me to doing at least 2 engagement, which one was a live training course with O'Reilly, and another was a computer vision course with O'Reilly. And then that led me to writing for NVIDIA. And a bunch of gigs have just come from me just being present online. And in fact, me being in MongoDB is actually off my Medium articles. It's not off any of my most of my previous technical career gigs definitely played a role. But I was explicitly told, hey, we saw what you did on Medium. It's great. come and do the same thing here at MongoDB.
Interesting. Okay, so to that end, I've seen similar roles at Databricks where we sort of leverage personal social media accounts and the ability to write content and then sort of repackage it as Databricks advertising almost. And on the most technical side, it can be in the form of tutorials. On the least technical side, it can be in the form of this is a fancy new concept called Gen AI. Consider using it. What does your day-to-day look like?
Wow. That's a very interesting question. So my day-to-day, my primary role as a developer advocate is to educate developers and our customers on how they can use MongoDB for their AI applications. Now, the way I educate is in different forms. So it could be tutorials, like you mentioned. This could be tutorials on written tutorials, like we do on Medium. And I also do tutorials on YouTube, which could be like live streaming, like we are doing now, where I go through a bunch of notebooks or a bunch of code. And I also have different forms of engagement in my day-to-day role. Sometimes we create notebooks that live on GitHub repositories, tutorials on GitHub repositories. And there are times I'm talking to customers. So I've as you know, Gen AI is everywhere. So I've had extensive conversations with customers over MongoDB building AI applications. And we're really exploring some edge use cases. And at MongoDB, we're a database company, but we're supporting customers on every level, including AI knowledge and thought leadership.
Yeah. Okay, so lots of different types of content creation. And yeah, to the comment on MongoDB supporting a lot of use cases, yeah, at Databricks, we only have good things to say from what I've heard. There's actually a customer that I'm working with that uses Databricks for ETL, then MongoDB as the serving layer. So yeah, we're still in sort of the microservices era where lots of things can plug and play. You can switch in and out components. Got it. So in your personal opinion, what is the best type of content creation for personal learning?
I was reading this book called Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. And he was arguing in the book where he was saying that most people don't generally learn by writing, right? It's just an assumed it's just an assumption. Or maybe I'm paraphrasing very, very wrong. But I find the best way or the best form of content for learning is just typing. It's the closest to writing, right? It's just typing. I know people can learn by just doing a podcast like this and they pick up the good stuff and they could go deep dive later on in their own time. But for me, just writing, because when I was writing Medium articles or when I'm writing articles and tutorials over at MongoDB, I cannot say a technique or a word and not explain it to whoever I'm writing for, because then I'm just making things a bit ambiguous, right? So I have to explain every technique, and that allows me to double click into things I don't know and fills my gap, my knowledge gap. So that is the best form, just writing tutorials, typing it up. I find it more better than doing videos on YouTube. If you watch some of my live stream, you might just see me just sweating profusely and just I remember one of my last live stream, I had a coughing fit. So that doesn't happen with tutorials, does it? So yeah.
Usually. Yeah, so I think you're referring to the concept of the Feynman technique, where you go and learn through teaching. And if you can't explain something simply, you don't know it well enough. And so by writing it out, you sort of list out all of the core components. And then as you're trying to describe each component, if you can't do that, you go and learn it. And that's sort of like a test to see if you truly know something. Do you find that writing implementations via code does the same thing, or should it be via words?
What do you mean by writing implementation by code? Do you mean pseudocode?
No, I mean, let's say we're hooking up a vector database in MongoDB and we want to build some sort of RAG application based on that. Is that a better method of learning, or would writing a blog be sufficient?
I think first, if you're going to build a RAG pipeline using MongoDB, we have loads of tutorials that will help you just get something started up in like 5 minutes, right? Literally, we have a collab notebook, just run all the cells, put in all your MongoDB configuration, and you have a RAG pipeline, right? So that will help you get started. Now, if you want to learn, because a RAG pipeline has different components, there is a chunking, there is the embedding, there are different aspects of a RAG pipeline that you can dive into, and we have the resources that can help you to learn that. So if you want to get started up and just do RAG, we have notebooks, we have a GitHub repository, which we'll link in the show notes. But if you really want to learn, then I would say every component of the RAG pipeline, you want to probably double click into and explore that topic. You can spend several months in areas of different RAG pipeline. And now we're moving into agentic systems, which have their own complexity in terms of system architecture and other areas that you probably need to fill some gaps, because agentic systems are making the old are becoming new with agentic systems, right? Unit testing are now a thing in AI, but yeah, so it's something that essentially, if you just want to build something and get started, we have tutorials for that. But if you would like to just have that thought leadership, have very in-depth knowledge, technical knowledge, then I would say deep diving into what you're actually implementing helps. Free content.
Yeah, I think I agree. My approach is typically, if you have a quick start notebook that can get you sort of 50% of the way there, you know how to implement, you know how to generally make something run and not fail. But if you want to become sort of a next level developer, it's really helpful to go and actually understand what's going on. So not to get into the vector database stuff, but what is the embedding model? What does it do? How is search performed? Is there hybrid? Is there filter? All these types of things are actually really, really relevant in your use case. That said, people don't have enough time to become experts in everything. So another question, or sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and you don't need to be an expert in everything. As in,
exactly.
I was talking to a few folks and I was like, there's no such thing as an AI expert. The only thing that anyone could be is be an expert learner, and that's it. That's what I'm trying to be. So I'm not an expert in AI, but if there's something I don't know, I know how to learn it.
Right. Yeah. How do you define that cutoff, though? When should you be like, all right, this is good enough, I quote unquote know it?
For me, like, doing this thing is fun. Doing AI is fun for me. So I was doing a full-time job and writing content on Medium after my 9 to 5. Now I get to do it I get to write content and do different variety of content as my full-time job. So when I dive into topic and I explore it, I don't typically have a cutoff, because just to give you an example, I went into uni back in 2018, focused on computer vision and deep learning. I was writing those stuff on Medium back in 2018. In 2024, I'm going to release a computer vision course. So many years later, for me, there is no cutoff. It's just, hey, the stuff I learned in 2018, I've forgotten. So it feels good to just relearn stuff and just go back to the roots of deep learning, look at all the different architectures and of neural networks and how they've progressed over times and discover things that are new, right? That's fun for me. So if we're talking about a cutoff, for me, there isn't. It's when I for an article, there is, because you have an aim of an article, you have a goal and what you want to teach. But in terms of a field, as in, it's exciting just being involved in this.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. In most Databricks engagements that I'm put on, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm rarely like that upfront about it. But when you say, "Hey, I have this problem, solve it," I don't know the solution, but I know that I can get there, and so that typically drives what I learn. And if I can build it to meet the success criteria, then I say I know it generally, and I generally stop learning about it. But as you said, there's so much cool stuff. Like, you could spend many lifetimes deep diving into all this.
Yeah, is it until I get to the level of Andre Karpathy? That's where the cutoff is, right?
Yeah, and even he has a bunch of blind spots, I'm sure. Like, it's just too much for one person to know. Okay, so I'm revisiting your LinkedIn and going through the insane path of graduate software developer, full stack JavaScript, contract web, founder, course instructor, computer vision, program lead. It goes on. So why so many disparate jobs? And I understand that that's sort of an artifact of being a contractor, but did all these different experiences help you? Did you enjoy that? And did you intentionally set out to have this path?
Okay. Let me break. Did I intentionally set out to have this path? Not a lot of people know this, but me coming into the whole computing world was a mistake. In the UK, when you go into college, which is this in between limbo state between secondary school and university, you do it for 2 years. When you go into college, you have to choose 4 subjects. I chose 3, and I chose chemistry, physics, and maths. But you have to choose 4. So I came into the induction day with just 3 topics, and they weren't going to let me enroll because you have to choose 4. And I just said, hey, choose for me. And the person putting me into the college chose computing. And that's how I came to this path. And the only reason why he chose computing was because he was the computing teacher. And here I am today over talking about AI, all because of his whim and chance. But really, my career trajectory ever since then has been it's been what makes me excited. So I used to be a web developer, full stack web developer. It's something that is one thing that made me fall in love with the MongoDB technology. I used to focus on the mean stack. And I did that for a number of years. Then I got bored. You would notice that I moved from places to places because I guess when you're young, you can get very bored easily and you want to be excited. You want to keep learning. But I was a web developer and I feel like I reached a ceiling and there wasn't much I could learn in terms of breadth, but I could definitely have gone deep. I felt like I was deep enough because where I was as a contractor, for you to become a contractor, back then anyway, you had to be a what you would call like a specialist, someone that could come in and solve a very particular problem. So you will notice those contract gigs are for about 3 months or 6 months, because what we're doing in those contract gigs is the team are experts that come in to build a certain system or a certain front-end application and deploy, and you're done. That's it. So you have to know what you're doing, be very good at solving problems and finding solutions. So that was like the stage I was at when I was a web developer. And I got bored and I decided to go to the next challenge, which was AI. And I bought this massive textbook, which scared me to university to go through I was like, wow, AI is so difficult. There is no way I'm going to learn this by myself, because I tried to do the self-learning thing. And I went to university to get a master's. But today, people are becoming AI experts off YouTube videos, apparently. So I got the wrong end of the deal. But that explains like the different paths, right? And the instructor or me writing for NVIDIA or writing in other places, really that's just stuff I do outside my 9 to 5, because again, this is fun for me. I like learning and I like sharing what I'm learning about. So I wrote on Medium. I write in a lot of places. I wrote for Neptune AI, which is more ML ops focused. And I wrote for NVIDIA, which was more data science focused. And I taught on O'Reilly, which was computer vision focused. So just dabbing into little bits and just learning.
Got it. Why do you write? Is it solely for your personal gain for learning, or do you like giving back?
It's selfish. It's just so
cool. That was the question. Yes.
Yeah. It's just so I can learn, because again, I'm not the 8-year-old kid or that started programming. I'm not the kid that started programming when I was 8 years or 13. I came into this field by accident, so I had a lot of catching up to do, and everything just didn't click initially for me. So I just had to spend double the time and double the effort that I think it took other people to. So it's just a practice for me now. It's just habit.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm the same way. I if people get something, great, but it's more for my personal benefit. Do you think that sort of roundabout path helped you?
Helped me in what?
That's a good question. Uh, so you could have studied computer science plus technical writing. I'm sure there's degrees somewhere out there that combine the two. You could have also gone directly into this AI ML route, and you could have theoretically not taken all these disparate roles. But you got a lot of exposure to many different types of work, many different problem sets. Do you think that exposure helped you in your career and what you're doing right now, or would you have rather been sort of a super focused specialist?
Well, if I wanted to become a specialist, then I guess I would have stayed a web developer and had that depth, right? So the reason why I'm here now is because I am not focused. I'm just moving around, right? That's why I'm where I am today. I always tell people like I would like to say that everywhere I am now, I planned it all. It is all part of my grand plan
Of
because
course.
my close friends are like, "Wow, Richmond, you work at MongoDB now." And I used to be a big fan of the technology, such a big fan that I bought the stocks when they IPO'd. And I used to like it was just free. It was just free stocks. I was a university student, so I didn't have much. It was £100 worth. So to my friends, they're like, "Yeah, you definitely planned this trajectory." I'm like, "No, I'm just going with the flow, right?" And one thing at MongoDB is you will find that most people in MongoDB are very passionate about what they're doing, and they're very passionate about the technology. So there's a lot of content creators in MongoDB. There's a lot of hackers in MongoDB, people that are just working their way through their own products or working through their way through side projects. In my interview at MongoDB, we were showing each other our side projects, and that was one of the code interviews, just talking through the codes and the lines and in someone's hobby projects, and he would just gauge in my expertise. And it is what you find. I don't think is unique to MongoDB. I think it might be a byproduct of being in AI. It's just fun to just build stuff, right?
Very fun. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I definitely want to talk about that. One more question on career trajectory, though. You said sort of boredom and curiosity were the driving factors. How do you know you're bored?
Good question. How do I know I'm bored?
And I can elaborate a little bit. Like
Yeah.
yesterday, I was bored. I was in a call. They were talking about sort of in an inefficient way. They were talking about not that interesting things that I had done a million times. And so I checked my phone. That is boredom. Should I leave my current career or my current position just because of that? Maybe, maybe not. So, like, how many days in a row of being like, "Damn, this kind of sucks," or like, what is sort of the inflection point when you're like, "I should probably switch"? What does that feel like to you?
Mm. So if you look at my career path, I've switched industry. So from web to AI, I'm not afraid to go back to uni. Then I've also switched different companies and job types. So when do I know that I need to switch? I guess it's just instincts, right? When you're no longer excited, maybe it's like a relationship. When you just stay in a bad relationship, you're like, this is going nowhere for me. As in, people stay in bad relationships for several years before they leave, don't they? Right. So
No
for
comment.
me, I'm like, I kind of like detect it very early on. Like, hey, I am not excited about this. I'm not excited about being in this space. And it's not just one meeting. That would be crazy because I'll be in a lot of different companies. But it has to be for a period of time where I find myself not being excited. What that looks like, I don't know. Maybe I stop writing about this particular topic, or I stop talking about it, or I stop feeling passionate about it. So it just signals to me like, hey, you're no longer excited about this. This thing that you're doing is becoming a job. Go look for
Yeah.
something you're excited about.
Yeah, I think what you're saying resonates. The way that I look at it is I'm a very hope-driven person. If I'm not hopeful, if I'm not excited, a lot of life becomes less fun. There's less appeal. And so there's sort of, it's a soft line. Obviously, there's no like, I have X points of hope. Now I need to switch. It's a soft line that's intuitive, but hope and excitement are definitely the way that I gauge if I'm in the right place. Um, it's just also so productive to be excited and hopeful because you work well. You have better ideas. You're more efficient. You want to get up in the morning. But if you're not
Yeah.
having that excitement and hope, maybe it's time
And
to switch.
one thing I mentioned earlier on is I was brought into MongoDB to focus on tutorials and written type content. But really, when you come into MongoDB, is whatever you make of it, right? Now I'm find myself talking to customers, giving an hour, 30-minute sessions on agentic systems. And that's exciting. That is very exciting because one, there is a lot I don't know. But also the stuff I do know, I get to share it with people. So it's and if you're in AI, trust me, you're gonna be excited for a very long time because the tunnel goes deep, doesn't it?
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, and you can go deep in a variety of different directions. It can go deep on the high level use case, it can go deep down to the computing layer, over to the side to the algorithms, to distributing those algorithms. So there's a lot to learn for sure.
Yeah. And even in terms of MongoDB as a platform, there is so much, right? So MongoDB, we act as a vector database within RAG systems and agentic system, but it's also an operational data layer, right? You can store any type of data on it. But we also have a streaming product feature. We have ability for you to run MongoDB instances on edge devices. So there's so many areas. We have MongoDB charts, right, for time series data. So even within MongoDB, I'm like, there is so much excitement and so many areas that I have not yet gone into because vector search and RAG is such a deep tunnel that you can go into specifically. But yeah, it's an exciting place to be.
Yeah. So let's dig a little deeper. You hinted at a couple things. One is these sort of data cloud providers, Databricks, Snowflake, MongoDB, all the others, they have a subset of the microservices stack that's required to build a good data platform. What do you see MongoDB investing in from that perspective?
So definitely in terms of product features of MongoDB, we're investing we're investing across the board, right? So first thing is we're solving key problems for our customers, and we have different product features to do that. But I see a lot of investment towards the future, especially AI application development. So not just, and the thing about MongoDB is we're not just doing things at the technical level, we're doing things at the thought leadership level and other areas that you can think of. So I'll give examples. So in terms of technical side, we're investing heavily on the vector search capabilities of MongoDB. So helping people to do efficient retrieval within the RAG system or agentic system, efficient retrieval and relevant retrieval is one of the key things that is pretty much the bread and butter of vector search. Having the functionality itself retrieve the appropriate document based on a query and chunking and different holding different embedding sizes. But one thing we also do about MongoDB is we recognize that MongoDB is not a model provider. We're not LangChain, we're not Llama Index, we're not OpenAI, we're not Anthropic, but we can bring the expertise of these folks together. And we have a new program called the MAP program that I call it the Avengers of the AI, because what you get if you come onto the MAP program is expertise from all these AI companies. I'm talking the Llama Index, the LangChain, a lot of companies that focus on evaluation. Some companies are focused on providing us models, and we bring that expertise to our customers. So we're really meeting our customers and developers at varying level, and that's where I see MongoDB investing a lot in as well.
Got it. So what I heard was vector databases are the bread and butter, models are not the bread and butter. And then from there, you guys look to be scrappy and solve problems at multiple levels. Is that about right?
Well, not scrappy, because the use case we're dealing with, and again, MongoDB has existed for over a decade now, so we have that expertise to not be scrappy, right? We have
True.
best practices. We know what we're doing in terms of building scalable, performant application, and we bring that expertise to the table to our customers. So, and this is customers are developing enterprise applications. So that's what we're building. And when I say we're not model providers, I mean, we know what we do best, and that is being a data layer. So we can't go and start fine tuning or building foundation models, right? That would not be a good investment of our time. You're not going to, that wouldn't be a good investment of our time. But what we can do is identify our key partners within the space and bring their expertise to our customers.
Exactly. Yeah. Just as we were alluding to earlier, you can't have an AI expert. And likewise, an organization can't be like a fill in the blank expert. They need to delegate where they're not capable or where they just don't have staff. Like, for instance, I do professional services. We don't do staff augmentation. There are millions of consultants in the world, though, that can do that. So we typically leverage partners to do a lot of the customer work when applicable. So it's cool to see the same sort of focus and specialization. Another question. So we've been talking about RAG and vector databases. What do you think are sort of the unsolved problems in this space? What's the cutting edge? What's the frontier?
It was specifically focusing on the RAG architecture. Unsolved problems are chunking strategies, right? How am I chunking my data? And what I mean by that is, how am I partitioning parts of my data, of my text data or audio data, into little bits that can be then embedded by an embedded model and stored in a vector database? How am I deciding where the cutoff point is, right? And I don't think that's a massively solved problem, because they're very different approaches to chunking. Another
Wait, sorry,
that is
question on that. Can you
yeah.
clarify the pros and cons of big versus small cutoff sizes?
Well, if we're talking about big chunking approaches, chunking big corpus of text, one thing you can get is your embedding model typically has a context window. So the model provider will probably truncate anything that overlaps the content window. So you're going to lose some information. So there's information loss. That's why you probably do smaller embedding sizes. But with smaller, not embedding sizes, sorry, smaller chunks. But with smaller chunks, you might not have enough information to enable to conduct efficient retrieval. So the way the retrieval works is you get a query, then you embed the query, then you do a vector search on the vector on your query embedding and the embeddings you have stored. Now, if the embeddings you have stored in your vector database doesn't contain enough information to have a rich semantic information within it, then the retrieval of the chunk itself and the allocated metadata is not going to be great. So that's why it's not a solved problem. There are different approaches. And personally, for my learning, because one, I understand the RAG pipeline on across all the components, but if I had to choose one that I had to that I am going into, is going to be chunking and evaluation, LLM evaluation. So my knowledge in those need to improve to the point where I can, because they're unsolved problems, but I can give people best practices.
Got it. Okay, and then one more question before you continue. What are your thoughts on Llama Index versus LangChain versus building your own versus something else?
That's a loaded question.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware.
Where's my... So firstly, I don't have any favorites because the position I'm in is a developer advocate. So it's my job to know it's my job to know how to use all of these tools and communicate them. So if you see the articles or videos I've done, some of them cover Llama Index, some of them cover LangChain, some of them actually don't use any of this abstraction frameworks to implement the RAG pipeline or whatnot. So what are the best, right? So for me, I find if you want controllability of every component within a RAG pipeline, sometimes I might go into not use any of the abstraction framework. And what I mean by that is there are times where I want to conduct some specific queries, right, that this abstraction frameworks might not have implemented yet. I probably want to do that in native MQL and not use any abstraction framework to conduct any sort of filter on my data. I'll do that directly using the dollar operator and aggregation pipeline that we get with the MongoDB query language, which is very easy to use. The whole point of this abstraction frameworks or data frameworks like Llama Index and LangChain is they're very easy lift and they get you to where you need to be much quicker. And they're growing, they're maturing to the point where you're able to do the things that you might not be able to, that you can't do previously in terms of in-depth query. You're able to do them now. And MongoDB works very closely with Llama Index and LangChain as well, the engineers over there. We have integrations with both of these frameworks. So if I was to say what the pros and cons, is really on a use case by use case basis. Yeah, as in, it will be hard for me to choose.
Okay, cool, thanks. So you were going through the unsolved problems when I rudely interrupted you?
Yeah, I think the biggest ones for me anyway are, well, the chunking. I mentioned about the chunking approach. Also LLM evaluation. I wouldn't say it's an unsolved problem, but it's a problem that it's a step that a lot of people tend to ignore. Validating your system, because in machine learning, right, when you're actually training a machine learning model, you actually do a validation procedure in parallel as you're training the model. So you actually watch your validation loss, which indicates to you how well your model is actually doing to any unseen data. But within this sort of cycle of AI, a lot of people are going into production without any sort of form of validation system in place. They're just like hoping everything works on vibes. But and I've been guilty of that as well, because it's so exciting. You just want to get something out there and solve a problem, right? And start using this tool, but it actually hurts in the long term. You build a lot of technical depth. So LLM evals or LLM evaluation is a topic that a lot of people need to start thinking of very early. As in, I'm going to put out a bunch of content on this. We already have a lot on MongoDB written by some of my amazing team members, but in terms of, again, you could always go deeper, right? So I'm looking to go deeper into LLM evals, into chunking. And another unsolved stuff is agentic system, right? Last year, agentic system were a bit unpredictable. You couldn't control the execution flow of the system itself. But now you have tools like AutoGen and LangGraph that gives you more deeper level of controllability and steerability of the execution graph. So agentic system are still an unsolved problem and an area for people to explore creative approaches to enforce reliabilities in this system. And we find that the old is becoming new. So there's a lot of unit testing. There's a lot of old practice that are coming into generative AI application development. That's what I'm seeing.
Cool. How do you communicate the stochastic nature and explain that it can be reliable to customers?
That it can or it can't be.
It is possible to build a production system with a fundamentally stochastic tool.
Well, the LLM evaluation and the procedure within that is the answer to that, right? That you can't just say, "Hey, trust me, bro, it's gonna work."
I mean, you could try.
Right? You could try, right? Just like trust me. But when you start showing, hey, we have this annotated data set and we've run it through the model and it's generating content that has a low amount of hallucination, it's got high relevance, and you're able to show that in a very objective manner, then you can start to build confidence. And that's why you see a lot of tools emerging in this space. So we have Langsmith, you have Arise AI, you have Patronus AI, and you have all of this observability and monitoring tools that are coming out to give people that confidence, because it can. And not only do they give you confidence, they show you where things can be improved as well. That's why I'm making it like at least for the next few months, deep diving into some LLM eval tools, and just the same way I've done with LangChain, Llama Index, Haystacks, and the whole data framework. I want to explore the ecosystem around monitoring, observability, and evaluation. But yeah, the answer to your question is very straightforward, right? It's just use objective-based metrics to show that your system can be reliable.
Yeah, I think I agree. That makes sense. If you can show, it's just like with any other model. If you can show that it works in a training environment, then you roll it out slowly to a production environment and then just monitor it for drift. It's the exact same thing as any other ML model. I think that.
That's not new.
Sorry.
Those concepts are not new, right? Those
Exactly.
are ML ops stuff, right? They've been there for years.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the days where Ford recommends a Chevy truck or whatever that meme was, those are sort of starting to like decrease. And especially if you have a good training evaluation step, you can really guard against things that are real hardcore hallucinations. And maybe it says not the right thing, or maybe it doesn't say the right piece of information, but it's not going to tell you how to build a bomb or, like, I don't know, set your kitchen on fire, whatever the concern is. Got it. So if you're going to go like and build this evaluation framework, I know you're going to be looking into this in the next few months, but can you give sort of a 60-second overview of how one would approach that?
So the way I'm approaching the topic of evaluation is to look at the stuff that originated from NLP, right? NLP is not my strong point. Deep learning, like computer vision was, as you can tell from my article, but NLP, because natural language processing has a bunch of metrics that they use to evaluate outputs from all these natural language models. So you have stuff like the Blue score, the Rouge score, and you have stuff like Meteor. So those evaluation metrics are based on statistics, which is really difficult when you're trying to evaluate reasoning models like GPTs and all the Claudes out there. It can be really difficult to use those objective metrics. So new metrics are not emerging, but are here. So there's a lot of metrics that are able to quantify hallucination. There are people that just solely use the LLM as it's called LLM as a judge. So you use the LLM as the evaluator of your system, where you're able to give the output, you give a reference data and a bunch of prompt to make the LLM play the role of an evaluator and give you like a very single label. Hey, does this output does this output have any information that is not in the reference text? And you could use that to detect hallucination. So, and you could just use LLMs for that. So you don't have to use a massive one. You can use a small LLM for that as well. So those are the new stuff. Like correctness is another metrics that is coming out, and that is how I would look. So if I was to advise someone, I would say start with the basic stuff like the Blue score or Sacre Blue score or Rouge score, and those are not perfect. Then you start to move into implementing LLM as a judge, and then looking at tools, right? Looking at Langsmith, looking at Arise AI, that makes all of this such an easy lift. You'd have to build your own framework from scratch if you don't have the resources to.
Right. Okay, going one level deeper, a lot of these metrics that you were referring to, like Rouge, are supervised. And basically, Rouge you can think of as recall. So with that, you need a truth set. Do you have any advice on defining that truth set, the true prediction that is actually correct? I've found that to be really challenging.
Yeah. Data. What's the classification of this problem? Like data collection, data sourcing is always been a problem within machine learning. Is in you have platforms. What was it called? Mechanical Turk. It was a platform where I think that was Amazon. Yeah, and that was used for like data sourcing, right? Yeah, so I don't know if that still exists. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if it still exists, but
I don't know
it's
either.
data sourcing and data collection and data annotation is an ongoing problem. And in generative AI application space, it's still, like I said, the old is new, right? We still have the same problem, but the way people are solving it now is synthetic data, right? I did a live stream a couple of days ago, and I just got a bunch of synthetic data using an LLM just to create an example of. I gave her a few examples, and I was able to create me a data set with some few prompting. Now, there are some. I've seen some papers saying that there are issues with models that are being trained on synthetic data. I've not double clicked into those, but that is the way I would say one solving these problems of data scarcity when you're trying to build this data set is try synthetic data, and you can just try good old manual labor. Yeah, good old manual labor is in. There is no race. There is no race to finish. So what I would say is maybe putting your team aside and maybe dedicating some time to actually creating some of this annotations yourself, like people used to do back in the day. There was a time when people didn't have ChatGPT and had to annotate
Yeah.
it, or had to draw like the annotation boxes on several images, and that took hours.
Yeah,
Like
bounding boxes, man.
yeah, and you just
No,
now you have these tools that do it automatically. It's crazy. Well, you just have
yeah.
to like spend several hours.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's sort of another unsolved problem. Typically, it's subject specific, and you want to become a subject matter expert for your specific problem, and then either manual input them or guide some sort of automated system to do that. But because it's so use case specific, if I ask one question in one context, there could be 50 good answers depending upon another context. And so it's really important that you think critically about your business use case or your personal use case and ask the right questions and then define the right truth set.
Yeah. Is this what you tell your customers?
Yeah, because I don't want to do that for them. Like it's really hard to go in and become an expert in their business. And typically I can't. Like it takes, I don't know, several months to get up to speed on what are their true problems. So for instance, I was recently working on a financial project. I just didn't have the expertise to know what was good and what was bad. So we would say, hey, we'll put out some responses, give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. That'll be our binary label on whether it's good, and then we can start tuning accordingly.
One
But
question I would ask is, do you when you're building this RAG pipelines for your customers, right? Do you do an evaluation step first, an evaluation and validation process, or do you just build out the RAG pipeline and go back? And the reason why I'm asking that is because one thing, this space is moving so fast, and a lot of people want to see POCs and stuff in production. And when I say a lot of people, I mean the investors. Everyone thinks we're in the AI bubble. So most people building these demos in large enterprise company might be feeling the heat, and they might say, "Hey, I don't have any time for evaluation. Just run on vibes." So tell me, what are you seeing, or what are you telling people?
all right. So on whether there's time for evaluation, if you're not making time for evaluation, you should be fired. It's like just not evaluating a model and putting it into production is not how any technical thing works. That said, as you mentioned, there's a lot of heat, and right now there's a lot of pressure, specifically from some executive that heard a podcast about ChatGPT that we should be using Gen AI. All of their competitors are using it, so let's implement it as well. So I've been on a lot of those projects where they're just like, find a problem, solve it with ChatGPT or RAG or closed source models, and that is a very different business use case. But what my job is to ensure that we're building a reliable and stable solution that also meets the business need. So it depends upon the customer, depends upon their angle, but evaluation is absolutely essential unless you're doing very basic things.
Would you say everyone is doing basic things? As in, I know we can there are different components in a RAG pipeline that you could go deep on, but where does the complexity come in, right? That you're seeing, because everyone is still building this RAG-enabled chatbots, right? Very few people are moving into a agentic system, which is a little bit, maybe one level up. But where does the complexity come in when you say basic things?
Yeah, so when I think basic, I think applying a custom LLM over a data set that extracts a piece of information, summarizes it, that type of thing. It's one shot using a pre-trained model, not even using RAG. The more complex things are typically RAG based with a variety of different sources, like disparate sources, and also in different formats. So you need to start using SQL tools, you need to start using maybe custom API calls, and it's this complex agent chain that synthesizes a bunch of data and then returns it to the user. So that's when I say complex, that's typically what I'm referring to.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you? What's the most complex thing you've seen?
Definitely around, well, there's some cool stuff going on in the agentic space, man. The stuff I've seen makes me feel like I'm doing nothing. I'm like, dude, I need to go back and hack away. There are some agentic systems that I've seen. I won't go too much into details, but it's not necessarily what the agentic system is doing, but is the components and how they're maybe doing tool selection, right? You know, the agents have a bunch of different tools, how they're doing tool selection, tool storage as well. There's some folks are not programmatically storing the tools. And there's some cool stuff in how they're profiling different entities that the system interacts with. It is also cool as well.
Come on, give a little more detail. Just a little. They won't know it's them.
That is some detail that I've just given is in the tool storage and the tool selection process is very interesting, because if you think about it, right, if you're building complex agentic systems that are meant to interact with a bunch of systems, what you're going to have is a very convoluted Python file, right, of just different functions and whatnot. So what's a good way to store that and actually retrieve that? There's some cool stuff I've seen some folks do, and that's a complexity in not the agentic system itself, but the infrastructure and the way you're building out the system. It's that for me that's some cool stuff. But also in terms of the variety of data types as well. Man, there was an interesting use case where an application was doing pinpoint frame selection based on a prompt. So imagine a movie. I have this with my wife all the time, where I'm trying to get her to remember a movie, but I can't remember the name of the movie, but I can remember a scene in the movie.
Right.
So imagine a tool where you could tell it and then it brings up the particular scene. Now, if you think about it, for a system to be able to do that, you have to embed pretty much every frame of the scene of the movie for you to, or at least maybe every like 10 frames or so. And you have to do different chunking retrieval steps. And it's that was a bit complex and cool, because I'm like, wow, I need this.
Yeah, for real. It's like Shazam for movies, but describing the movie.
Describe exactly.
Why doesn't that exist? I guess that's as you said, it's a lot to index all that, but
it's such a useful tool. It would save me a lot of doing a bunch of charades and whatnot. Like,
yeah, I would pay 99 cents for that on the App Store for sure. Okay, cool. So I know we're sort of coming up on time. I wanted to wrap with one final question. Back to the career stuff. Do you have any advice for people that maybe started in any portion of your career and that would want to enter into a developer advocate role, or specifically enter the AI ML space? Do you have any advice for them?
To enter into the AI ML space, is easier than it was back when I did it, because I went to go buy a huge textbook and went to university to get a master's. Now you can watch a YouTube video, you're good. Or you can watch a bunch of several YouTube videos. And I don't think, I might be wrong on this, I don't think people put too much emphasis on certifications anymore. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Back in the day, people were treating certifications like collecting Pokemons. It was
That's funny.
And everyone was asking, hey, have you got a certification in this? Have you got? I was like, no, I don't. And I don't know if it's still the same vibe, if people are very much into certifications as they used to back in the day. And also, I'm saying back in the day, good Lord, I'm not that old. This is just a few years ago. I don't know. I think it's changed, but there used to be such blurred lines between what a machine learning engineer does and what a data scientist does. So if you're looking to go into AI at this point in time, apart from there's loads of learning resources, so you gotta be able to filter out the signal from the noise. But knowing what role you want to go into I feel like it might still be as ambiguous as it was back then. But the only difference is you're expected to do some stuff with LLMs in whatever role you're in now. You could be a data scientist or a data analyst or machine learning engineer. You better know how to call some APIs, boy. But yeah, so it's I'm saying that. So the general advice is what I said right at the beginning. If you're looking to go into AI and ML, right, just try to be an expert learner. Don't try to map it out. That's what's worked for me. I didn't try to become a developer advocate. I just did advocacy stuff while I was trying to become an expert learner. And it turns out this is a full-time job.
Yeah, no kidding. I completely agree. The way that you get promoted is by doing the role above you for long enough, well enough. Likewise, if you want to do a lateral transfer, the way that you do that is by doing that role until someone is like, damn, we kind of want you to do this role full time. We can't live without you. So 100% agree.
We can't live without you.
I mean, that might be a bit extreme, but yeah. Okay, cool. Lots of cool stuff. Let me summarize some of the key points that I found really interesting.
I would like to get your opinion. How would you advise folks to like go into AI and machine learning?
I don't have a concise answer. I think it depends upon where you are. If you are in the data space, try to use AI and ML in your existing application. So if you're like an analyst or if you're even like a finance person, maybe try to apply some machine learning into that. If you're really far away from the industry, it's tough. You just got to go hit the books and start hacking side projects. I think Kaggle is kind of overrated, but doing something you're truly passionate about makes it sustainable. So for instance, in college, I did basically a random forest model on a bunch of NBA and MLB data to bet on DraftKings. And I learned so much about ETL, how to manage models, what the hell random forest is. And that kept me going. Like I would actually want to work on it at night instead of being like, damn, let's go get me that ML job. It was just a passion project. So I guess those are the core pieces of information. If you're in data, try to apply existing models to your use case. If you're far away, find a passion project that can keep you going for however long it'll take to get the skills.
Your answer is very good. It makes my one look kind of rubbish. As in my answer was like, go with the flow. Your answer was very good.
There is something to that though. I completely agree. Like don't overplan. Like keep your eyes open and try to see what opportunities arise and then pounce.
Yeah, exactly. Seize the moment, seize opportunities, and I like this. And the thing about I'm just gonna bring it back to MongoDB is there's so much role you can play here in terms of the different type of roles we have. I get surprised every time I'm here. We have a venture capital within MongoDB. I'm like, you want to be a VC? You can be that within MongoDB. I'm like, damn, like that is very interesting for someone coming from a very startup-y background. It's very, very interesting to see the variety of roles you can play here, and you can build your career horizontally even within the same company. So for me to become I was a web developer, and I transitioned into AI. I had to go into university. But even in a company like MongoDB, you can just do that by talking to the right people, showing them the skill sets you have, and making that transition and transfer horizontally to a different team. So I think one thing I'll add to the show notes is the careers page for MongoDB in case people want to make that transition into AI or machine learning, or want to just work with some passionate people.
Yeah. Where are you? Is there an area that you guys are hiring specifically, or is it across the board?
I think if you look at a careers page, we're definitely hiring across the board. There's going to be something there. Definitely a page that people should keep their eye on. MongoDB has grown exponentially over the years, and with this AI stuff, and we definitely need some talented people, and not just in coding, people that are just passionate about this. It's very exciting. Like, I really mean it when I say I'm in a company and I come off my calls with customers, or I come off my calls with my team member, and we're just like, we're having similar conversations like this, where we're passionate about the stuff we're doing. We're debating on what method is better, or how we can decide which one is the best, or what to even talk about to our audience. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And to elaborate a little bit, I have a buddy that was one of the early software engineers, back-end engineers at MongoDB back when it was this startup called Mongo.
Yeah.
And yeah, he raved about the culture. He's since moved on, but it's a really cool organization. All the AI space is growing really fast. So definitely recommend if you're interested. Cool. So some key points. One thing is, if you're looking to truly learn something, write about it, use the Feynman technique. That'll show the gaps in your knowledge. Another thing is, let curiosity and boredom drive your career trajectory. Excitement and hope, once that goes away, typically, it's time to move on. More tangibly, when choosing a wrapper framework around your RAG application, LangChain and Llama Index get you to production faster, but sometimes you have to roll your own solution for edge cases. And then some cutting edge things that are currently unsolved, but hopefully will be solved pretty soon. One is evaluation of these models. Two is how to chunk. And three, agentic systems. They're a bit more stable than they were a year or two ago, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in each of these three areas. And then finally, there are no AI experts, just expert AI learners.
Exactly.
So, Richmond, if people want to learn more about you, MongoDB, or your work, where should they go?
Definitely check out our developer center on MongoDB, where you can see a bunch of interesting folks like myself that create content. Also, we have the MongoDB.com page, which has a bunch of, we could take you in different directions within MongoDB. You can find me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. I love the LinkedIn messages. So the messages people send to me, I reply to them. I try to reply to them. I treat LinkedIn like it's Twitter, but people tell me I'm not funny. But
I did see a post about your skincare routine.
Oh no. No one asked me that as well, even if you finished reading the post. That was a clickbait.
Yes. Well done. I did click on it.
Excellent. So your next article, just write about your skincare routine in the headline. Then bring them into some content about random forests. You got them anywhere.
Yeah, it's a well-known fact that machine learning engineers really care about their skin. So
yes,
perfect.
We're both. This has been a fun conversation, but I'll put in the show notes some resources. We spoke about the RAG notebooks to help people getting started. I'll put in the show notes GitHub, one of the best GitHub repository that you can basically spin up to put out different type of RAG pipelines with different stack, with different levels of the stack. I'll provide a career page as well, and our developer center.
Amazing. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Until next time, it's Michael Berk, and have a good day, everyone.